Cindy Williams didn't tell her fans about her last sickness. She abruptly stopped doing shows. No one was aware of her absence for 5 days following her passing. Her sister has now revealed startling information regarding those final few months. She is revealing the truth about what actually transpired behind closed doors. You will be astounded to learn the truth regarding Cindy's medical care. Hollywood was aware of the problem. However, nobody realized how bad it was. You will be devastated by the details. On August 22, 1947, Cindy Williams was born in Van Nuys, Los Angeles. Her father, the acharred Bill Williams, was employed in an electronics company, and her mother, Francesca, worked long hours as a server. There was never enough money. Cindy's early years were characterized by mobility and hardship. When the family relocated to Dallas, she was just 1 year old. Then they went back to Los Angeles at 10. She became flexible as a result of having to start over every time due to these adjustments. She also learned how to quickly connect with people, which would aid her in the entertainment industry. She was not a child by herself. She was close to both her half-brother Jim from her mother's first marriage and her younger sister Carol Ann. They lived in what some may refer to as less fortunate conditions. Cindy learned early on how to make the most of very little and wore hand-me-downs. She was able to handle her father's alcoholism because of her humor, brown hair, and blue eyes. He was erratic, but he also made her laugh by impersonating Milton Berle and Jackie Gleason. She remembered those times. Comedy was a form of security. Church became a haven for her. She felt safe from the turmoil at home at Sunday school. She performed in small plays there and even had a fantasy that she would be discovered by Debbie Reynolds. Cindy later claimed that even though she felt little in her home life, performance gave her a sense of strength. She participated in school plays and won her teachers with her timing and facial gestures. Sally Field was one of her classmates at Birmingham High School when she graduated in 1965. Cindy was getting ready, no longer merely daydreaming. She attended Los Angeles City College to study theater after high school. It wasn't glitzy. She worked late shifts and auditioned during the day as a waitress to make ends meet. Before landing her first national ad, she chronicled 15 unsuccessful auditions in a diary and survived on 4 to 5 hours of sleep. It took her a while to get her big break. She spent years living on $75 a month, sometimes to the last $20 in a small Hollywood apartment. She never quit up though. By 1969, things started to change. A commercial for Foster Grant sunglasses caught her attention. Then followed additional advertisements, TWA Airlines and others that helped her get her face on television and pay the expenses. She played minor parts in television series, such as Love American Style and Room 22. They were never leads though. She was always the girlfriend or the neighbor. Nevertheless, each role represented a step forward. Then the moment she will never forget arrived. She had to dance with Gene Kelly in 1970 while working on a variety show called The Funny Side. She stepped on his foot mid-spin out of nervousness. He finished the number like a pro, never letting it show. She trod on his foot a second time when they performed together years later. "Child," he continued, laughing, "something's never changed." That sort of genuine, untidy, and slightly uncomfortable charm turned into her signature. She was admitted to the Actors Studio West in 1971. Although it was a great honor, she was unable to attend on a regular basis due to her busy schedule. She began to attract the attention of more well-known people about this period. After seeing her in a short play, renowned director George Cukor cast her in Travels with My Aunt in 1972. Abruptly, she appeared on film with Maggie Smith, and working with a man who had influenced Katharine Hepburn and other celebrities. She ultimately got her big break in 1973 when she was chosen to play Laurie Henderson in George Lucas's low-budget movie American Graffiti, which was about teenagers in the 1960s. Despite only costing $77,000 to produce, nobody anticipated the film's success. Williams did more than merely assume the role of Ron Howard's girlfriend. Later on, she claimed to have pulled straight out of her actual heartbreak. After advising her they should see other people, her lover broke up with her and moved on to someone else. Her character displayed genuine feeling as a result of that sorrow. One of the most impactful scenes in the movie is the dancing sequence with Howard, where they argue under their breath because smoke gets in your eyes while grinning for the audience. To give her more nuance, Lucas even revised some of the script. Williams had prior expertise, in contrast to many of her co-stars. She had appeared in the renowned George Cukor-directed film Travels with My Aunt only a year prior. American Graffiti, however, was unique. She was nominated for Best Supporting Actress at the 1975 BAFTA Awards, which was an amazing distinction for someone so young in her career. She lost. Ingrid Bergman was the recipient, but it meant the world to be nominated with such a legend. Williams had put forth a lot of effort to get there. After working as a waiter, she starred in a movie that helped establish her career. Future stars Richard Dreyfuss, Harrison Ford, and Ron Howard. Casting had been a crazy procedure. A teenage Mark Hamill was one among the more than 100 unknown actors that tried out. However, the person who had faith in her was producer Fred Roos, who had worked on The Godfather. That conviction was successful. Her relationship with the American cast of Graffiti extended much beyond the movie. Something unexpected resulted from her and Ron Howard's natural relationship. Howard had transformed into Richie Cunningham on Happy Days in 1970. She altered her life with just one appearance when he secured her a guest role. The screen was illuminated by their chemistry when paired with Penny Marshall. When Gary Marshall saw it, he launched Shirley and Laverne right away. Although it rose to the top of the American ratings, Penny and Cindy were already well known. They had already developed a tight connection after meeting on a different shoot years prior. Harrison Ford, who was still employed as a carpenter at the time, was another person she met through American Graffiti. He was persuaded to play the cool, rebellious Bob Falfa by Fred Roos. Coppola's next major motion picture would bring them together once more. Yes, Francis Ford Coppola cast Williams in The Conversation in 1974 after seeing her in American Graffiti. He was writing the Godfather saga at the same time as this. She co-starred with Terry Garr, John Cazale, Gene Hackman, and a young Harrison Ford in The Conversation. There was also an uncredited role for Robert Duvall. The film, which received the top award at the Cannes Film Festival, was about surveillance and paranoia. The movie made $4.8 million and received 3 Oscar nominations, including Best Picture, despite only costing $1.6 million. Williams subsequently discussed the distinction between Coppola and Lucas. Lucas was reserved and succinct. After a take, he would frequently simply say, "Great." Conversely, Coppola was vivacious, frequently complimenting his performers and soliciting their opinion. Despite the fact that both directors altered her life in distinct ways, an odd thing occurred. Her career came to a standstill when she starred in 3 consecutive critically acclaimed films: American Graffiti, Travels with My Aunt, and The Conversation. It was illogical. She was too well known to return to waitressing, but she also failed to land major movie parts. To keep herself occupied, she began writing with Penny Marshall. For about $30 per week, Francis Ford Coppola's Zoetrope Productions engaged them as part of a tiny group of female writers. Nobody thought it was a huge deal at the time. Just 2 women were attempting to succeed in Hollywood. However, a significant event occurred. They forged a close creative connection while writing together. Unbeknownst to them, they developed the chemistry that would eventually define their careers by learning how to bounce ideas, punch up jokes, and more. Then everything changed in late 1975. With just one phone call, Gary Marshall, Penny's brother and the man behind Happy Days, called them unexpectedly while they were working on a project. He requested that they play 2 girls going on a double date with Fonzie and Richie during their week off. When Gary referred to the characters as the girls who date the fleet, Williams recalled giggling. "This will be fun, bookers," she joked. They didn't give it much thought. It was a small, ridiculous role. 1 episode, and a speedy salary. "Yeah," they said. When they entered Paramount Studios on November 11, 1975, they had no idea that they were going to alter the course of television history. Viewers fell in love with the 2 Milwaukee girls the moment the show aired on January 27, 1976. Williams portrayed the endearing Shirley. Marshall portrayed the tough one, Laverne. In the episode, Fonzie summons Laverne and Shirley for a double date after Richie asks for assistance following a breakup. It was a straightforward setup. Audiences, however, were captivated. What was initially a little joke became a sensation. Even Penny subsequently stated that they were supposed to be the females who released, but as soon as ABC recognized the possibility, that version was swiftly removed. They had an incredible chemistry behind the scenes. Everyone took notice. The producers, the crew, and the live crowd. It was impossible to ignore. Tom Bosley, who played Mr. Cunningham, is also seen in a humorous blooper standing behind a door fully visible through the glass waiting for his cue. However, Richie and Fonzie were no longer the center of attention. It had moved. The scene had been hijacked by these two women. 2 weeks later they received a second call, this time from Gary Marshall's workplace. The program had been viewed by ABC executives. They have no desire for additional guest appearances. They desired an entire spectacle. Penny and Cindy had no idea what a spin-off was. They needed to inquire. They only knew that something significant was taking place. There was more to their relationship than mere acting. It felt like telepathy, according to Williams. They didn't have much to practice. They simply anticipated each other's actions. Williams always studied until the very last minute and took her writing seriously. Marshall, on the other hand, she nailed it with hardly a glance at the script. She was prepared to roll after smoking a cigarette and telling a joke. In some way, it succeeded. Their partnership was strengthened by their differences. She also got involved in the following major project, simply because she and Perry Marshall clicked. The television debut of Laverne and Shirley took place on January 27, 1976. It erupted in a matter of months. It accomplished the unthinkable by the fall of that year. In ratings, it outperformed Happy Days. Over 60 million people watched it weekly at its height. Cindy, who was well known due to American Graffiti, rose to fame. Her visage appeared in every living room, on lunchboxes, and in periodicals. Schlemiel, Schlemazel, Hassenpfeffer, Incorporated, the opening chorus, was adopted by playgrounds all throughout the United States. She was making $30,000 per episode by 1979. For an actress in those days, that was a huge sum of money. She created Shirley Feeney rather than merely portraying her. Cindy laughed nervously at Shirley. Before they even shot the first episode, she practiced for weeks. She considered Shirley carefully. As the character, she even maintained private journals. Cindy suggested that Shirley wear clean prom clothes and be given cuddly animals like Boo Boo Kitty. The entire show popped because of that contrast with Laverne's tomboy appearance. Women started requesting the Shirley hairstyle at salons by 1979. Every week Cindy received more than 1,500 fan letters. Not everyone liked Shirley. They sensed her. However, there was a tough person hiding behind the kind speech and charming smile. Cindy did nearly all of the stunts herself. It was a serious physical comedy. She had to wrangle bottles on a conveyor belt for 37 takes in one 1978 program. Despite having 3 bruised ribs, Despite having no prior skating experience, she performed the splits on camera for the 1977 roller skating scenes. Filming skiing scenes in the bitter cold for hours even caused her to get frostbite. Before the show began, she studied with vaudeville artists. She once spent more than 50 hours practicing a 3-minute performance with Penny Marshall. She became known as the female Buster Keaton because of her daring antics. Her work was seriously recognized in January 1978. Cindy received a Golden Globe nomination for Best Actress in a Comedy. Legends like Jean Stapleton and Carol Burnett faced her. Even though she lost, it was a game changer. She was now viewed as more than half of a duet by some in the industry. She was promised major roles, greater money, big deals, and creative autonomy by the studios. She rejected every one of them. She remained faithful to Shirley and Laverne. New benefits resulted from her loyalty. She had greater authority under her contract than the majority of actors at the time. However, everything began to unravel. The show relocated from Milwaukee to California in 1980. The jobs at the brewery were gone. The magic was the same. Her lawsuit claims that Gary Marshall attempted to force her to leave because she was pregnant. The studio agreed to make room for her, she said. They promised to include it into the plot, give her the full $75,000 each episode, plus $37,500 for each rerun, and allow her to work safely until October. However, they later withdrew. Cindy felt deceived. The contract fell through, and she was left with little choice but to choose between her job and her child. She sued Paramount in August 1982 for $20 million, half for general damages and half for penalties. Although he helped her, her husband's presence also created conflict on the set. Later on, Penny Marshall acknowledged that she didn't get along with Hudson, claiming that he made things more difficult. Things quickly came to a head. In season 8, Cindy only made 2 appearances, then Shirley disappeared. No send-off, no farewell. There was only a message stating that she and her husband had moved. The audience was taken aback. Even though it was now simply Laverne, the show continued to use the names Laverne and Shirley. Penny Marshall had to respond to perplexed admirers who wanted to know where Cindy was. She referred to the entire situation as a drag. Cindy's departure from one of the most popular television programs came at a high price. Not including reruns, she turned down a $1.65 million contract that year. Even if the litigation was quietly settled in the end, the harm had already been done. Suddenly, her Hollywood future was in doubt. There were rumors. She was accused of making ludicrous requests. Cindy remained largely silent, concentrating on her new job as a mother, while others blamed it on a quarrel with Penny. It was more than simply a wedding when Cindy Williams and Bill Hudson tied the knot on May 1, 1982. A tumultuous and emotional roller coaster began. Cindy entered a complex family right after Bill and Goldie Hawn's divorce was finalized. She became the stepmother of 3-year-old Kate Hudson and 6-year-old Oliver overnight. Although both children would go on to become well-known Hollywood celebrities, the family was anything but picture-perfect at the time. The tension was high. From the beginning, Bill's relationship with Oliver and Kate was tense, and it only got worse with time. In 2015, Oliver's Father's Day post criticizing his father caused a huge uproar. Bill retaliated, accusing Goldie of inciting the children against him. For Kate and Oliver, Goldie's long-term companion Kurt Russell took on a fatherly role that Bill never had. It produced 2 distinct, seldom communicative families. By 2021, Kate acknowledged that she wished to get back in touch with her half-siblings, stating that time was of the essence. Many people hoped that Cindy's death in January 2023 would somehow end the years of family silence. The 18-year marriage between Cindy and Bill ended in 2000. However, Cindy had already had to make a decision that would change her life even before the divorce. She discovered she was expecting their daughter Emily at the beginning of 1982. Cindy was one of the biggest stars on television at the moment, and Laverne and Shirley was about to enter its 7th season. She believed she could continue working while expecting, perhaps hiding under set furniture like many actresses do. However, producers insisted that she continue filming until her deadline, which would now generate significant legal concerns. Cindy declined. "I can't sign this," she murmured. Glancing at the document, she left the new season after just 2 episodes. She lost the Shirley Feeney role as a result of that choice, and a $20 million lawsuit followed, which was eventually discreetly settled. Later that year, Emily was born, and Cindy took a back seat to Emily. Her departure marked a sea change in Hollywood's treatment of expectant actresses as well as in her own life. Years later, she observed that sets began to provide on-site nannies and install nurseries. Although she didn't intend to be a pioneer, she ended up being one. William Zachary Hudson, sometimes known as Zachary or Zach, was Cindy's 2nd child, born in 1986. He joined his sister Emily and half-siblings Kate and Oliver, making their family large and complicated. But Cindy's decision seemed obvious. Her children would not be raised in the spotlight of fame. She raised them distant from flashing cameras in a calm, grounded environment. Zachary avoided the spotlight. He did, however, attend Cindy and Emily at her Hollywood Walk of Fame ceremony in 2004, which was a rare exception. He was around 18. Things became considerably more difficult in 2006. With his girlfriend Caroline Graham, Bill Hudson had a daughter, Lelania. Zachary and Emily now have a second half-sibling as a result. Cindy never wavered in her commitment to safeguarding her kids' privacy. In 2021, Kate Hudson made it known that she wished to be closer to her other siblings, Zachary and Emily. At least there was hope, even though it was obvious that the scars from Bill's broken relationships hadn't completely healed. Cindy's career had to change as her family increased. She sought to continue acting when she left Laverne and Shirley. However, it wasn't simple. The Creature Wasn't Nice, a quirky sci-fi comedy that was also known as Naked Space or Spaceship, was her first significant post-sitcom project in 1983. It starred Leslie Nielsen and cost $2 million. The movie failed and was re-edited into several versions that never truly connected with viewers, despite Cindy singing two of the songs. Euphoria, a low-budget science fiction movie that she had really filmed in 1981, was her next project. She portrayed Arlene, an alien-obsessed lonely store employee. Harry Dean Stanton and Fred Ward co-starred. However, the movie was put on hold and wasn't released until 1985. Later in 1987, it hobbled out on VH. Cindy's stardom was obviously waning, and these assignments were a long cry from her primetime sitcom days. She embraced the shift, however, rather than resisting it. She prioritized her family over notoriety. In 1982, Cindy Williams left Laverne and Shirley hoping to make a big return. In 1990, she made her first significant try with the sitcom Normal Life. It featured Frank Zappa's real-life children, Dweezil and Moon Unit, and was based on their peculiar upbringing. Cindy portrayed Anne Harlow, the mother. Although the concept of a blended family attempting to navigate adolescent upheaval sounded intriguing, viewers didn't find it compelling. All 13 episodes were broadcast on CBS between March and July, but the show's ratings continued to decline. The directors were constantly shifting. Nothing was successful. Cindy's anticipated spectacular comeback turned out to be a complete failure. Then she did something clever. She went straight into television films rather than another sitcom. She starred in a Perry Mason movie and Menu for Murder in 1990 alone. Part comedy, part drama, both allowed her to display a different aspect. She appeared in Earth Angel in 1991, a fantasy television film that once more demonstrated her range. Although these weren't big-budget ventures, they provided her with consistent employment. Above all, they allowed her time. Emily, born in 1982, and Zachary, born in 1986, were the two children Cindy was parenting. She was able to act without the stress of a 9-month sitcom shoot, thanks to TV movies. They kept her in the spotlight in Hollywood, but they weren't glamorous. It was precisely what she required. Cindy made yet another bold attempt at prime time in 1993. She starred in the sitcom Getting By, which followed two single mothers, one black and one white, as they raised their children in Chicago. It debuted with more than 21 million viewers, and was a part of ABC's TGIF program. However, ABC canceled it following the first season. It was picked up by NBC. However, the switch was ineffective. By the latter episodes, only 5.7 million people were watching, as ratings plummeted. After Warner Brothers took over production, there were issues behind the scenes as well. After only 31 episodes, Getting By ended in 1994, marking her final major role in a sitcom on the network. Her primetime stardom had subtly diminished. Cindy tried something entirely different once the 2000s arrived. She appeared on Comedy Central's outrageous comedy program Strip Mall in 2000. It was loud, provocative, and loaded with sarcasm from Hollywood. Cindy, who is known for her family-friendly television, took a risk by playing a version of herself. She appeared in only 6 episodes of the short-lived sitcom, but it made a statement. She could make fun of herself. She was demonstrating to the world that she was not mired in the past at the age of 53. She was willing to take chances that most of her peers wouldn't, and she had the capacity to change. Fans, however, still desired a hint of the previous charm. It came to them in 2000. For the first time in almost 2 decades, the original ensemble was reunited as Laverne and Shirley appeared together on ABC. 17.5 million people watched it. The touching moment that broke years of animosity between Cindy and Penny Marshall was when they hugged on camera. After becoming pregnant, Cindy quit the original show, which resulted in a painful breakup with Penny. However, they reconciled during the reunion. There were memorials to deceased cast members, bloopers and sketches. Everyone was reminded of how adored those actresses and characters truly were. Cindy then astonished everyone once more in 2004. She played a grandma who concealed her son-in-law's abuse in Law & Order SVU. The episode was realistic, gloomy, and unsettling. More than 15 million people watched. Cindy's silent, melancholic performance won accolades from critics. In order to comprehend the psyche of someone who would defend a predator, she had researched courtrooms and talked to psychologists. She was nominated for an Emmy, according to some. It was one of her most unvarnished parts, and demonstrated that, despite her fame, she was still developing as an actress 30 years later. She returned to the stage and performed in theaters all around the United States between 2006 and 2014. She gave 267 performances in 42 cities. She got an award for Best Actress in a Touring Show in 2007, after spending more than a year in the lead role of Nonsense. She played a clairvoyant in Blithe Spirit in Pasadena in 2009, and she didn't miss a single show in that role. She also went on tour with her previous co-star Eddie Mecca, in Lunch Hour, a romantic comedy. She wrote it all down in 2015, when she was 64 years old. Shirley, I Jest, her book peaked at number 7 on the Los Angeles Times bestseller list and sold 48,000 copies in its first month. She talked candidly about the negative aspects of Hollywood within. 6 weeks after giving birth, she disclosed that studio executives pushed her to shoot. She also acknowledged that she turned down Jaws 2 in Airplane due to schedule conflicts. Details of her brief affair with Andy Kaufman and her protracted struggle with depression following the cancellation of her program were included in the book. She visited fans throughout her 15-city book tour, and she even brought the original Schlemmel sweatshirt with her. The memoir was more than a summary of his career. It was her method of correcting the situation. She made a comeback to film in 2018 at the age of 71 with Still Waiting in the Wings, a tiny independent film about struggling New York performers. She was passionate about the story. Cindy had also pursued her aspirations while working as a waitress. She brought passion and humor to a younger audience this time around, by co-starring with icons like Ed Asner and Chita Rivera. 5 prizes were given to the film. She was still turning up on set, prepared to work and teaching newcomers, even in her 70s. However, one relationship that with Penny Marshall remained at the core of her narrative over all these years. Pain and pride had shattered their connection. When Cindy was forced to leave the studio, she felt abandoned, felt isolated after the show ended without her.